So you want to be a change agent. I love that, and I want that for you. You know, advocating for creativity, innovation, and change, that defines a great career. I want you to be a champion for change, but I do have to tell you, on occasion, every champion gets knocked out. You see, the issue is perception. There's how you perceive something. You bring forth an idea, let's say. You think it's interesting, it's important, we've got to do this, but how everyone else sees that, well, they have different views, different perceptions. They might see an idea they don't understand, or an idea they don't like, or a person they don't enjoy. They might even see you as deviant, and that's okay. Pay the price, it's worth it. You see, you cannot build a life with legacy unless you are more than just a good steward of the status quo. Yeah, there's some really nice research on people who are more advanced in age, and we ask them, looking back at life, so what do you think? What do you regret? What do you wish you would have done? And they say a lot of predictable things, and one of the most common is, I wish I would have lived more fully, more engaged. I wish I would have taken some of those risks in my career. I wish I would have done A, B, and C, but I didn't. Not you. You're going to step up and be a change agent. Sometimes they won't like it or understand or support you, might even call you a deviant, and that's okay. Pay the price. It's worth it. Now, for me, this has been an ever-present theme since I was very young. Truth is, I remember trying to be authentic and expressive when I was young. I remember the first time I got my ear pierced. My father wouldn't speak to me for 2 weeks. It was tense. And then not much time passed and I got my first tattoo. Well, he didn't speak to me for almost a month. And when he did, you know what he said? He said, I think you might be ruining your career. Now, thankfully, we were very tight, so that was hard to take. But thankfully, that time he was wrong. But it made an amazing impression on me about the importance of the difference between what you think and see on a given issue or behavior and what everyone else sees. So sometimes you're going to be seen as deviant, and that is okay. It's worth it. Pay the price. Now, when I say it's worth it, what do I mean? Well, if you develop this mentality, this skill set, over time, you will attract more opportunities. Yeah, you will have more big wins than you otherwise would have. And you'll attract people who are very like-minded, increasing the odds that your next effort will be successful. I've seen many interesting examples of this difference in perception that causes change agents challenges. Maybe one of my favorite involves this guy. This is Danny the Devil Duck. That's right. I found this in the bathtub with my children many, many years ago. After they were done with their bath and I was cleaning up the toys, I saw the little red devil duck and I picked it up and laughed because I had recently purchased it for him and I just thought it was cute and snarky and fun. Then I realized, I think I have a new use for this little toy. I was dealing with a client who was having some fairly strained innovation-related conversations. I thought the duck, in fact, could be a good icebreaker. So I took the duck to the next client meeting and I used it, and it worked better than I thought to make people engage and loosen up and laugh just a little bit. I became so enamored of Danny the Devil Duck that I decided to kind of adopt him as a mascot. So the next thing I did was I put together a mailing to a few prospective clients. I had a nice letter from me and one Danny the Devil Duck, and a little note was tied around his neck, attached by a string. It was a square, laminated piece of paper, very colorful, and it said, "You've been ducked by Dr. D." And then it had a note that went with it, and at the time I thought it was very funny, and I mailed it out, and then I waited. And it did lead to some good conversations and a little business, which is wonderful. But the best thing that happened in terms of learning and growth and insight was an email that showed up in my inbox a few weeks after the mailing. And it was from the head of HR of a very large firm that you have all, no doubt, heard of. And it said, "Dr. Dewett, I'd like you to know I'm in receipt of the package you sent." It was clever, and it did get my attention. But I have to tell you, I don't think I'll be using your services, and here's why. Satan does exist, and it's not to be trifled with. This is an important issue. You don't joke about it. And then she proceeded for several paragraphs, very earnestly, very kindly, to explain a little about her religion, but mostly about how she genuinely thought I had made a problematic, if not dangerous, business decision in adopting that particular rubber duck as my mascot. Now, I have to tell you, When you want to advocate for an idea, when you want to step up, whether you're just repping yourself or pushing an idea you think the group and the organization needs to consider, under any of those circumstances, sometimes they're going to love you, sometimes they're not going to understand, and the feedback will not always be affirming and positive. So what do you do in the face of that reality? You do not show negativity. You do not push back and say, let me explain myself to you. You don't do that. You appreciate what they've done for you. And I tried to do my version of that in this example. I clicked reply and I said, thank you. I know how busy you are. I'm not sure I fully understand your feedback, but I'm going to consider it sincerely. And I thank you for sharing it. I meant that. Now, the very best thing that came out of this is once again that lesson about us needing to be clear about the differences in those perceptions. So I printed out that email, I framed it, I put it on the wall in my office as an ever-present reminder about some of the difficult waters we have to navigate when we try to step up and be a little more real, a little more authentic, and attempt sometimes to be change agents. I love that example. It kind of was my favorite for a long time until something else happened. This also involved my children. Do you remember these? This is bubbles. When we were children, let's be honest, this was a whole lot of fun. How can that be anything other than a good time? Do you remember the hours we spent as kids using bubbles? Came home from work one day, saw the kids in the yard with their friends. All of them had bubbles. They were everywhere. And I laughed as they played. And then I thought to myself, I think I can use this. And I realized at the time I was teaching in an MBA program, one of the courses was about creativity, innovation, and change. Now, as a teacher, no matter what I'm teaching, I know that we want to get past passive learning towards active learning. So thinking and reading and talking, that's good. But it's not good enough. We really want to get them behaviorally engaged. And so I'm watching the kids. I'm very excited. Here's what I decided to do. I decided to go buy a whole bunch of bubbles and take them to class. I walk in, I've got a big box, a bunch of MBA students sitting there looking at me strange, and I said, listen carefully, don't think deeply, here's your task. When I'm done speaking, I want you to get up, come down here, claim your own bottle of bubbles, and then leave the classroom. Don't think deep, just do it. Leave the classroom and go blow some bubbles. That's it. I said, ready, set, go. And when I said that, nobody moved, which is interesting. Just a moment later, 3 people jumped up and they're smiling and grinning like, thankfully, someone has finally asked me to go blow some bubbles, right? They start walking down, and as they did, well, a few people followed them. And when they did, a few people followed them. And you could see that effect happen. Fascinating. I'm going to return to that in just a moment. They left the classroom as instructed, started blowing bubbles everywhere. I watched them, and it was fun. It, in fact, was fascinating. And after about 10 minutes, I brought them back in, sat them down, and I said, okay, let's debrief this. I have a few observations, and then I want to know what you felt, what you maybe learned. My first observation, in the class, when I said, ready, set, go, nobody moved. And then 3 crazies right there, 3 pioneers. That's how I think about them. People who go first and try it, take the risk, brave the risk. I love it. They jumped up, and then, only then, did the rest of you slowly but surely get up and join them. That's because change doesn't happen by just sharing an idea and one person standing up and saying something. No, you have to build bridges, form groups, let that spread, build more bridges, form a coalition. That's how an idea diffuses and becomes potentially an effective change movement. Second observation was about you after you got outside of the classroom. I watched a negative emotion on average in this group switch to a positive emotion after just 10 minutes. I mean, most of you walked out of this classroom and you're carrying your bubbles and you're feeling kind of apprehensive, like, what am I doing? I mean, are we going to be graded for this, right? Finally, a few of you just opened it up and said, let's go. And you started blowing bubbles. As soon as you did, imagine that. Others followed suit. Looks of apprehension and concern faded quickly. They were replaced by looks of joy and engagement. It really did look like a delightful activity. Third observation and final observation was about the people out there who saw you. Some faculty and staff were walking around. Some students were studying all over, and they looked at you and responded with a wide array of responses, absolutely a wide array. Some people, well, they laughed. They thought it was funny. They were thinking to themselves, where do I sign up for the bubble class? A whole lot of other people seemed pretty disinterested, actually. Then there were a few people who seemed agitated, maybe even angry, because you guys were loud and disruptive. I have to tell you, that's a great life lesson. It's a great career lesson. You can't just say, here's a wonderful idea, we should take it seriously, without anticipating that wide array of responses, because people have different perceptions and different goals and agendas, etc. Know that going into it, you'll be more prepared to deal with it. Now, I said to them, what about you? What did you learn? And immediately one student did this. And he said, well, I just want you to know you're right. They were mad. Some people told us, could you be quiet? We're trying to study. And I said, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I didn't mean to get you in trouble, but thanks for sharing. Absolutely. And then another person raised their hand and said, I just wanted you to know, Professor, I think you upset the janitor. I said, excuse me? They said, well, yeah, when we walked out, he had just used that wonderful machine and he finished cleaning and shining the tiles out there in the business school. And then we walked out with bubbles and we were blowing him and the residue was everywhere. And he knew he was going to have to do his job again. And I said, thank you. Let me go follow up with him. Unintended outcome. And then a woman raised her hand and said, well, Professor, I just wanted you to know that me and him, we took you serious when you said we could go into other classrooms. And I thought, oh, when I gave them instructions, in fact, I did tell them, hey, if you're feeling brave, why don't you just walk into another classroom very quickly, just a couple of seconds, blow some bubbles and leave. Now, I was just being silly. I didn't think they were going to take me seriously. But these two people did. This woman and her partner walked into the classroom next door to me, and it was an economics professor. And they didn't do anything for 4 or 5 seconds tops, just walked in, didn't say anything, blew some bubbles, and tried to walk out. But before they could escape, they got yelled at. The professor said, get out of my classroom. What are you doing? Stop disrupting my classroom. And they came back and told me, I just wanted you to know this happened. Maybe you should reach out to your colleague. And I didn't have to reach out to my colleague because when class was over and I went to my office, there was another email waiting on me from my economics professor colleague this time, telling me clearly I knew nothing about proper teaching methods. And then instructing me that it was disrespectful to bother her learning environment. And it was such an egregious violation. She, in fact, wanted to tell the dean of the college what I had done. And the next day I got a call from the dean who said, I kind of get it, but please stop annoying your colleagues. And basically, I got away with it. But I have to tell you, it made a very important point. And I did the only thing that made sense. I print out that email, 2 copies. The first one, I framed it, and I stuck it on the wall of my office right next to the duck email as yet another beautiful reminder about what it means to attempt to navigate change, because sometimes you do something simple and innocent, and it's not how it's seen by other people, and that's an important lesson. I took the other one, of course, to class the next time we met, and I read that thing to them verbatim because I wanted to make an impact in their life about what it means to successfully face and engage change. I wanted them to remember those perceptual differences are everything. So, you want to be a change agent. Now, I think that's great, but now you know it's a lot more than just one person sharing an idea one time. I mean, you really do have to learn how to shape and sell your ideas so that they're understood and maybe very useful to others, not just yourself or your own team. You really do have to build bridges, form groups, and then coalitions, because that's the only way that change eventually spreads in an organization and sticks. I mean, you have to be ready to show up when you advocate for change, willing to do all the extra work necessary to make it happen. And most importantly, you have to show up knowing that sometimes they will see you as deviant. And that's okay. For the right cause, the right issue, at the right time, it's worth it. Be a deviant, pay the price. I'll say it one more time. Be deviant, pay the price. I have some good news for you. Over time, this is a skill you can learn. You can gain competence and comfort. Taking smart, principled risks, that's a thing that you can do. And as you get better, people will stop seeing you as just deviant. They'll begin to see you as clever, proactive, even brave. So, for the very last time, I'll say it again. Go ahead when it's time, be deviant. Pay the price. It's worth it. Good luck.